interactive and as informative and as helpful as possible. So please put any questions you have in the chat box above your screen, or email us at events@chazak.org. Again, events@chazaq.org. And again, please share the link to everyone to join us every Wednesday night for this amazing series with Rabbi Shay Tahan on Halachot Shabbat Refresher. Join us every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on chazak.org/live, chazaq.org/live. And it is our great zchus, honor, zchut, to call upon Rabbi Shay Tahan. Really needs no introduction. He's a tremendous mechaber sfarim, an author, as the head of a Beis Horaa, which people call in their shilas, their questions on Jewish law. It's a great honor to come by Rabbi Shay Tahan.
Chazak v'baruch, Rabbi. Thank you very much. Thank you for Chazak again. And we like to continue on a series of Halachot Shabbat. We started last time Halachot Ofeh, or Halachot Bishul, in other words. And we said some basic halachot in that Av Melacha of Halachot Bishul. Today we like to continue and learn a little bit more of those halachot. But first, just a little bit to refresh what we said last time, which are basic things that we need to take them with us whenever we follow Halachot Bishul. We're going to have them coming back again and again. So those basic details have to be very, very clear to each and every one of us. The first thing we spoke about is the heat level that would make something cooked. And that is the heat level called Yad Soledet Bo. Yad Soledet Bo, we said, is about its machloket, whether it's 40 to 45 degrees, somewhere in between those. When we're talking about those are Celsius. When talking about Fahrenheit, we go about 113. That would be considered mevashel. That is the heat level that becomes problematic. And under that, you could put things on something that's warm. And as long as you know, they're not going to reach that level. If you don't know how to measure that, obviously we don't walk around on Shabbat with a thermostat to measure the heat level of our food. So one can just measure the way Chazal said, Yad Soledet Bo, which means if you put your finger in the water or in the food and you can't hold it there for too long, that will be something that will be considered Yad Soledet Bo, which is one of the things that you'll know is problematic. And under that would be usually permitted. Secondly, we're dealing with Bishul. Bishul has a certain, in order to be mechayev, it has a certain amount of cooking that it needs to process in order for the chiyuv to come. What is that amount? Machloket, whether it is what we call mevushal kol tzorko or kemachal ben dorsai. We explained Ben Dorsai was a thief, a robber that was always on the run, and because of that, he couldn't cook his food properly. He would just cook the minimum amount and eat it and go on the run, since constantly those that he robbed and the law would be after him, so he would be always on the run. So that's an amount that you know that that's already edible. He was able to cook and eat it to that level. How much is that? We said it's a machloket Rashi and the Rambam, whether it's half cooked or third cooked. What does that mean? So again, Rashi would say third cooked is already considered kemachal ben dorsai. Rambam says half cooked is considered already kemachal ben dorsai. There are certain times that we would use those measurements, but normally the amount that's be considered fully cooked would be, like we said, fully cooked. Mevushal, kol, tzorko. And therefore, for an example, if something was not yet fully cooked, although it was cooked half, and although it was cooked already 90% and 99%, but it's not 100% cooked, you can't on Shabbat take it and put it on the hot plate. Why? Because that extra percent, extra little bit that you're adding to the cooking is a Torah violation that one needs to be very careful. We said last time that there would be a nafka mina that whenever something was cooked already, let's say half cooked or third cooked even, and somebody did by mistake put it on top of the hot plate. So since there's a machloket over here, whether that was cooked already or not, because of that, we can say that legabei the dinim, that it was already cooked, whether it's permitted to use that food or not, is only forbidden midirabanan. And since there's a machloket, whether it's considered already cooked or not, one can permit it. To explain again, there's one thing that's asur midoraita, and that is cooking. But if somebody violated the halacha and did cook on Shabbat, am I allowed to eat his food, his cooking? The Torah doesn't forbid the cooking, but Chachamim did. Therefore, the issur of eating those cooked items is only the Rabbanan. And since that he cooked is something that was already cooked before Shabbat, half cooked or third cooked, so he violated something that has to do with a machloket, because there are those that would say that was already cooked, and bishul achar bishul, there's no more cooking after it was cooked the first time. Because there is such an opinion, therefore one can rely on that, on something that's only forbidden midirabanan, like benefiting from the food and enjoying and eating that food. Now that we said those basic reviewing halachot, we'll go to the halacha that we want to learn today. That is bishul achar bishul. There's a rule. Once something was cooked, you can't cook it again. It was already processed. It was already cooked. Once it's cooked, you can't cook it anymore. We found this in many places. Like for instance, and tochen achar tochen, something that was grounded already. You take flour. It's grounded already. You took the wheat, they grounded the flour. Now, you want to ground it again. That's after, let's say, you baked it into a cake or into a bread. So once you bake it, you ground it, that's not a problem. It was already grounded one time. So, and since it was done already one time, and tochen achar tochen, and so is the law by many other things as well. When we're dealing with bishul, that is the halacha. And bishul achar bishul, something that was cooked already, you can't anymore recook. There is a difference, as we spoke last time, between bishul of something that's solid and something that's liquid. Liquid, the halacha is that yesh bishul achar bishul, and solid, the and bishul achar bishul. Now, something that is liquid, that there is a issur of cooking it or heating it the second time after you heat it the first time, as we explained last shiur. Over here, there's a machloket in the Shulchan Aruch and the Rema, or in other words, Faradim and Ashkenazim. If you have a hot tea, let's say, you have over here tea, and that tea is hot. It was cooked already. The water was cooked. You put the hot water and you drink in it. Now it becomes cool again. So we said that you can't recook it. You can't put it again on the blech, because putting it on the blech on a hot plate would recook it. That's a problem. Yesh bishul achar bishul when we're dealing with liquid, and bishul achar bishul, there's no recooking when we're dealing with solids. We're dealing with liquid. Yesh bishul achar bishul. But according to the Shulchan Aruch, the level of the heat that goes down is under Yad Soledet. Once it goes down under Yad Soledet, you have something that was cooked already. Went down under Yad Soledet, the heat level, now you're not allowed to put it back on the hot plate in order to heat up again. Because under Yad Soledet, it's considered already cooked. That's a problem. That's considered already, it lost the heat, lost the cooking, lost the initial cooking. And that's a problem to put it back and recook it. According to the Rabbi, which Ashkenazim follow, as long as it's still warm, even though it's under Yad Soledet, one is allowed to put it on back on the hot plate in order to heat up again. So over here, we have a big machloket between the two. It manifests itself to many different halachot. I'll give you an example. When you have an urn, many times on the urn, you have that extra place in the urn that shows you how much is your level of water in the urn. It goes down according to the water in the urn. It's balanced. So that extra pipe in front of the urn, the water in there is not hot. The water in the urn is very hot. What about the water in that pipe that's see-through and just shows you how much water you have inside the urn? That's not hot. It's somewhat warm, but it's not hot. Over here, according to Sephardim, once you use the urn, it goes down, that water goes down and enters back the urn. That water that is not to the level of Yatzoledet, that goes back to the urn, could be a problem because you're heating up that water. There are leniencies for that. But it's an example of where one would have, for instance, such a concern. That same water that's in that pipe, that's under Yatzoledet, according to Sfaradim, you want to use the urn, that water in that pipe will go back to the urn and recook. That could be a problem. Again, there are leniencies about it, but that's an example of a simple thing that would be a difference between Sfaradim and Ashkenazim, because according to Ashkenazim, since it's still warm, although it's under Yatzoledet, that wouldn't be any issue and any problem. Now, when we're dealing with Yesh Bishul Achar Bishul and Bishul Achar Bishul, there's something that we need to define. What is considered liquid and what is considered solid? Yeah, I understand that simple cake is a solid, chicken is a solid, potato is a solid. I understand that water is liquid. But what about something that is in between, like ketchup, for instance, Jello, for instance, mayo, or things like this that are a little bit more on the liquidy side? They're not completely solid. Where do you place those in between the two? And the answer to that is that if you put it on a plate, for instance, and it falls to the sides, it doesn't hold still, that's a liquid. But if it holds still. Let's say Jello. You take Jello, you put it on a plate, it would hold still over there. It wouldn't fall to the sides. Ketchup, for instance, you have different types. You have those that are liquidy. Now, once you put it, you would spread out and spread to the entire plate, just like liquid would. But most ketchups are more solid. And once you put them on the plate, they'll stay exactly the way you put them. They might go a little bit to the side, just a bit, but not much. So that's something that you'll see a difference between solid and liquid. When you have something that is solid, but once you put it on a hot plate, it melts and it becomes liquidy. Is that permitted to put it on a hot plate or not? You have some kind of fatty thing with congealed fat on top of it, and you put it on a hot plate. Once you put it on a hot plate, on a tray or on a pan or in your pot, but it's a solid thing that is fully cooked already from before Shabbat, and you put it now on the hot plate. Putting it on a hot plate by itself is a machloket Sfaradim and Ashkenazim. Chacham Ovadia allows to take something out of the fridge that is fully cooked and put it on a hot plate. Ashkenazim would have a different halacha in that. It's a machloket that we need to speak about Be'ezrat Hashem in the future. But taking that thing that is, let's say it's a chicken. It's a chicken that has on top sauce that is congealed. And once you put it in the pan or in the tray, on the hot plate on Shabbat morning, this whole thing melts down and you have over here a nice amount of liquid. Is that permitted or that's not permitted? Shulchan Aruch speaks about a halacha in Siman Shin Yudchet Seif Tet Zayin, and he writes, Mutar liten infinada keneged ha'esh b'makom shehaya tzoledet. You're allowed to take an infinada, which is some type of dough with meat and fat on top of it or in it, and you put it in a place that is yatzoledet, that heat that we spoke before, and what happens is it melts. Says the Shulchan Aruch, Af al pi shashuman sheba nikrash chozer v'nimoach, which means that shuman, that fat, melts down, and now you have over here liquid. Is that permitted? Because we said in liquid, yesh bishul achar bishul, although it was cooked, but once you put it on the hot plate, it recooks again. Liquid would not be permitted to recook. Is that permitted? The Shulchan Aruch says it is permitted. The Ashkenazim are more strict about this halacha, but the Sfaradim permit it based on two reasons. One reason is because it's not straight cooking something liquid, because right now when you put it on top, it is solid. It stands still. Eventually it would melt and become liquid. That's like something that's grammar, indirect. That's how some understand this halakha. This is how the Chida understands this halakha, many others as well. Secondly, there are opinions that hold that en bishul achar bishul, even in liquid, as we explained, there's machloket rishonim in that. The Rashi and the Rosh are machmir, and this is how we posek. But you have a list of rishonim that holds it's permitted even by liquid. The Rambam, the Ran, the Rash, by Rabbi Yonah. There's a list of rishonim that hold that en bishul achar bishul, even in liquid. La halacha, we said, we posek like Rashi and the Rosh that we machmir, we don't cook something, we don't reheat liquid that was hot before and cooked before, and now it became cool. We don't do that, that's fine. But we can rely on that when you have other leniencies, as over here. You have another leniency that when you put it on top of on the hot plate and it's congealed, therefore it's going to melt only afterwards. You have over here two reasons to be lenient. And you combine both, although by itself you wouldn't say that liquid would be permitted, but together with the other reasoning that we said that it doesn't happen directly or just indirectly, which means after a while until it heats up, then it melts down. Such a thing is permitted. This is how the Shulchan Aruch holds. Again, the Rama is more strict with that halakha. Now, another interesting thing that the poskim argue, and that is whether you have something that is hard, it is solid, but you have in there also some sauce, some liquid, and it's not just, let's say, chicken. You have chicken in a tray, and together with that, you have sauce, a nice amount of sauce. So you have over here, and both were cooked before Shabbat. You have over here solid, and you have liquid. Are you permitted to put it on the hot plate? You take it out of the fridge. Again, according to those opinions, Sfaradim follow. This is how Chacham Ovadia was said. Sfaradim follow. It's something that's fully cooked. Can you put it on top of the hot plate? So you have over here a Rishon, a very important Rishon, Rabbeinu Yerucham, that the Beit Yosef quotes, and he said that as long as you have majority of solid and minority of liquid, it's permitted to put it on top of the hot plate. Both were cooked already before Shabbat, the solid and the liquid. But in liquid, we said, Yesh Bishul Achar Bishul. How could you put it on top? Says Rabbeinu Yerucham, majority was cooked, sufficient, and that is fine. Now, many poskim, Sfaradim, learn that this is a ta'ut sofer, it can't be. Also because Rabbeinu Yerucham contradicts himself in a different place that he holds. He says over there that you don't cook at all any liquid. Once it was cooked already and cooled down, you're not allowed to recook it. Yesh bishul achar bishul belach. So therefore, Rabbeinu Yerucham seems to contradict himself. Secondly, it's just why would there be a difference between a lot of liquid or a little bit liquid, majority liquid? If it cooks, it cooks. Therefore, some say that it's a ta'ut sofer, it's a mistake, and it can't be that Rabbeinu Yerucham said that, and this is not permitted whatsoever. That's how some say. But Chacham Ovadia held very strongly that Rabbeinu Yerucham is the correct halakha, and he supports it from the fact that we found his original Sfarim, and whatever the Beit Yosef quoted is accurate, and it's not a mistake, and therefore such a thing is permitted. How much liquid can you have according to the understanding of Chacham Ovadia and Rabbeinu Yerucham, which the Beit Yosef, the Shulchan Aruch quotes? How much liquid can you have? We said that you need to have minority of liquid, majority of solid. How much is that? That's considered 51% and 49%. So Chacham Ovadia agrees that one should try to be machmir. He calls it a chumrah. That's how Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef, his son, the Baal Yekut Yosef, says that he calls it a chumrah, which means if you have a nice amount of liquid, although it's minority in the dish, but for that you need to be machmir. Nice amount of liquid already, one should be machmir, should be more strict, should not be more that lenient to put it on top of the blech. But if you have just a little bit of liquid, that he said is not a problem whatsoever. But again, Yitzchak Yosef says that from his father's words, you see clearly that it's only a chumrah. In other words, if one wants to allow minority of liquid, it is permitted. In that he had a machloket, Chacham Ovadia Yosef and Arav Mashash. They had a big machloket. What was the meaning of Rabbeinu Yerucham? It's very interesting to see the way he writes, Chacham Ovadia, to Arav Mashash, that he says that Rav Mashash didn't have the original Sfarim that Chacham Ovadia found, with the understanding that this is exactly what it means. So whatever comes out is that, according to Sephardim, those that want to be lenient can rely on Chacham Ovadia. But many poskim argued, like for instance, the Horaa, and they said one shouldn't have liquid at all. Sauce, you have sauce in the chicken, you can't put it on top of the blech, since the sauce is cold already, it's under Yad Soledet according to Sephardim, and therefore you're not allowed to take that sauce and put it, even with the chicken, even though it's a minority, even though it's very little, on top of the hot plate. According to Ashkenazim, definitely the Machmir. There's no question that the Ashkenazim are very much Machmir on that halacha. But the Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Zatzal, writes that how much do you need to be Machmir if you actually see liquid, but if it's just the moist on top of the food, you have moist on top of the chicken. You take chicken, there's no sauce, but the chicken itself has moist on top of it. You take meat, it's not dry meat, rather it has moist on it. Nobody wants to eat just dry piece of meat. It has moist on it. You touch it, your hands will become wet. There's no sauce on the tray, but it's moist. Says Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach that that's permitted, that's not a problem. This is definitely something that one is allowed to be lenient. When we're dealing with those shiurim that we said before of Yad Soledet, we need to mention another point that we already spoke about, but it's very, very important to review those points because those are the basic of Hilchot Bishul, and that is that when you cook something, it's considered cooked when you put it on Kli Rishon. Kli Rishon means the actual pot, pan, whatever it is that was on the fire. Whether it is on the fire right now, definitely it's a problem. Even if you took it out of the fire, let's say you have a pot with hot water, you took it out of the fire, it's still Kli Rishon. If you put something in it, it would cook, although right now it's not on the fire. But let's say you took that water that's in the pot and you spilled it into a second pot, that pot is considered now Kli Sheni. Kli Sheni has different laws already. It's not the same halacha as Kli Rishon. Kli Rishon for sure cooks. Kli Sheni, not so simple. You have something that is called Kalei HaBishul, things that are easily cooked. The Gemara brings out two examples. One is, for instance, an egg. Egg, you put it in some low-level heat, it would also cook. And therefore, when you put it in Kli Sheni, since it's called Kalei HaBishul, easily cooked, you take an egg that's not cooked, and you put it in that Kli Sheni, second utensil that you spilled from the first one, the pot that was on the fire, you spilled into the second pot. That second pot would cook the egg, would cook also some type of fish that is very, very soft. Those are the examples of the Gemara. Therefore, those Kalei HaBishul, one should avoid from putting on Kli Sheni. What about other things like water and oil? That the Gemara tells us there's no cooking in Kli Sheni, only Kli Rishon. So over here, these are clear guidelines. Whenever you have a Kli Sheni, second utensil, you're not allowed to put in there eggs and those soft fish that are not yet cooked because they would easily be cooked. The Mishnah Berurah brings from the Noda B'Yehuda also that you're not allowed to put tea bags. Tea bags, you're not allowed to put in Kli Sheni because they're also easily cooked. That is something that one needs to be careful in Kli Sheni. And even that, Sfaradim, there are some Sfaradim that are lenient, but Chacham Ovadia says that it's more correct to be strict and on Litzion. So which means in Kli Sheni, you take the urn is Kli Rishon, you spill from the urn into your cup. What is your cup? Kli Sheni. Kli Sheni, you're putting that tea bag. That is, according to Mishnah Berurah, Chilul Shabbat Deoraita Chayav Chatat. It's a terrible thing. Sfaradim, some are more lenient about it because again, it's not written often in the Gemara. But the correct thing is to be machmir, definitely in Kli Sheni. But you have a question: what about other things, not those eggs and those fish that are definitely cooking in Kli Sheni, because they are Kalei Bishul, not those oils and waters that you are permitted to put in Kli Sheni, because the Gemara openly told us that that doesn't cook in Kli Sheni, only Kli Rishon. The question is everything else that comes around, are you allowed to put it in Kli Sheni or not? Ashkenazim are very strict about this din of Kalei Bishul. They say everything could be Kalei Bishul. How could you violate? How could you possibly go into a doubtful Chilul Shabbat? You might be violating Shabbat. Don't put anything in Kli Sheni. That is the opinion of the Ashkenazim. Sfaradim are more lenient about it. They say no. We are machmir in whatever we know is Kalei Bishul. Whatever we don't know is Kalei Bishul, we are lenient. That's the halacha and the minhag by the Sfaradim. What about Kli Shlishi? You take that cup, which is Kli Sheni, because again, the urn was Kli Rishon, and you spilled into this cup, it's Kli Sheni. And now you spill from that into a third cup. Is this also able to cook, the Kli Shlishi, or that can't cook anymore? That's a machloket. Pri Megadim in the Mishnah Berurah permitted. They said it's not a problem. Once it's Kli Shlishi, it doesn't cook. But the Chazon Ish was very strict. He said no. Kli Shlishi, if it's Yad Soledet, it's a problem. Even Kli Revi, it's a problem. One needs to be careful. So over here again, we summarized those halachot, Bishul achar Bishul, and we did some review over the basic of halachot of Bishul. Be'ezrat Hashem, let's see if we get some questions that we can address tonight. Bechavod, Rabbi.
Okay, so we have some very good questions on the topic directly on what we're speaking about. So number one is, can we put bread directly on the blech?
Excellent question. And that is a question that has few details. One is we need to understand, and maybe we'll speak about this also next week, and that is something that was baked, whether there is cooking after baking. There's no cooking after cooking, and Bishul achar Bishul, but cooking after baking, we have a machloket in the halacha itself, in Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch speaks about in Seif Hey, Shin Yudchet Seif Hey, that yesh mi sheomer davar shene'efa or nitzra, something that was baked. Some say it still can cook, and some say it does not cook anymore. So over here, there's a machloket how to go in this halacha. Hamoradia is more lenient, others are more strict. But you have also other problems here. Besides that, according to the Ben Ish Chai, when you put it on top of the hot plate, you make it crunchy. Making it crunchy is changing the form of the bread. And that is called makeh bepatish. You're making something that wasn't there before. It's a Torah violation. So there's another chumrah over here. According to the Ben Ish Chai, Chacham Ovadia says, en makeh bepatish beochlim. We found that to be a long biur halacha. In Seif Gimel, he speaks about the biur halacha. When the Mishnah Berurah has a biur halacha, a lengthy biur halacha, that proves that en makeh bepatish beochlin. So over here you have those that are very strict, those are very lenient. If one follows Chacham Ovadia, he can put those bread or challah on top of the blech and makes them crunchy. Those that are following the Or Litzion, he has the chumrah of what we explained before of Bishul achar Afiyah, or Afiyah achar Bishul. Or over here, when you put it on top of the blech, it's not Bishul because there's no water, but there is Tzliya. So that's something that also you have to stay away. And those that follow the Ben Ish Chai very much need to be machmir because he holds it's the Oraita, it's a biblical prohibition. What's the best thing to do? Unless you follow everything from Chacham there, one should try to be strict on this halacha.
What about for Ashkenazim? Because not for the Rav Ovadia or Ben Ish Chai. What about
so
I'll
tell you what. Ashkenazim are much more machmir on the inyan of Bishul achar Afiyah and so on, because they learned the Rama in Seif, as I told you before, it's in Seif Daled, Shin Yudchet Seif Daled, Seif Hey, I'm sorry. He holds clearly that everything is restricted. נהגו להיזהר לכתחילה שלא ליתן פת אפילו בכלי שני, כל זמן שאת סולדת פה. He's מחמיר on בישול אחר אפייה, and even on כלי שני, and all kind of examples. So for Ashkenazim, it is more strict, besides the other machloket of makeh bepatish, which is not a machloket Sfaradim and Ashkenazim. It's a machloket between the Achronei Poskim.
Okay, and then we have a dual type of question, which is it's two questions, but maybe there's a common denominator. So one is about we know that sometimes people on Friday night they have a nice chicken bowl soup, this and that. So how does tonight you're talking about that I guess to clarify just that for liquid there's ain bishul achar bishul, correct?
Liquid.
So how does
bishul achar bishul. Liquid is a problem.
Yes, it is.
You can't recook. Yes.
Yeah. So how is it? How do people heat up for a soup? How do they have it on Shabbat? And number two is, can I make instant noodle soup on Shabbat because the noodles are already pre-cooked?
Okay. So the first question is, you can't cook soup on Shabbat. You have to leave it from before Shabbat on the blech. If you took it out of the blech, it's now it goes into questions of chazara, returning food on the fire, which has the laws that we'll have to learn in details. Definitely not allowed to take the soup that cooled down and put it on the blech on Shabbat or Shabbat morning. That's definitely not permitted. But when we're dealing with traditional soup and the like, even though, let's say, the noodles are cooked, you're saying, which could be true, could be not. It looks like there's some things in there that were not cooked, maybe just dried. But regardless, since we're saying en makeh bepatish beochlin, this is the psak of the Mishnah Berurah, that's how Chacham Horaa brings down, this is how majority of the poskim hold. Therefore, if you put hot water in the traditional food, that's permitted. But maybe there's kalei bishul over there, you machmir that way. So then you put it you spill from kli sheni on top of that noodle soup, or if you're talking about traditional soup, I think it's the same thing. When you spill, you take kli rishon, it's the urn, you take it into a kli sheni, which is this cup, and you spill it into the traditional soup. Irui mikli sheni is already kli shlishi. Kli shlishi, we said that according to Mishnah Berurah and to Megadim, and majority of the poskim doesn't cook, and that's permitted. There's no problem of makeh bepatish, and there's no problem of cooking in that way.
Okay, now we had to end up. We have the hardest question, the bomb kasha.
Oh, wow.
Someone says, "What's the number of the Beis Horaa?" They want to ask some some questions.
No,
what's the best way?
That's a great question. So let me give you a little bit rundown on this. First of all, my number, anybody can text me or WhatsApp me, 347-666-3467. Again, 347-666-3467. You can go into my website, askhalacha.com, and get all the info from there. We also have Beit with the rabbis that I trained that one can go and ask the question. I don't have it off the head. It's on my phone. But if one wants to see, you can always go to Chazak. You can call Rabbi and get the info. You can go to Torah anytime. You can just type my name, and so much info would come down. If you want to subscribe to a newsletter, we have a weekly newsletter that's very interesting, and many other good things. Thank you, Rabbi, for always pumping up the good halachot that our sweet Torah teaches us.
And what's it called? In the recording of the video, we're gonna put right here below me. We're gonna put the number, email, all the information that for more information. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Again, everyone join us every Wednesday, 8 p.m. at chazak.org/live. Thank you so much. Thank you.